Hey, what's good, everybody? We are here for your December 2025 real estate update for what's going on with South Surrey and White Rock specifically. I am really looking forward to digging into the numbers, what's going on with housing prices, and give you a little bit of insight about where we think things are heading. Now, that said, there is two quick updates I want to let you know. Number one, you do want to keep an eye on this YouTube channel. We have got our yearly predictions video being released very, very shortly. So that is all about the feet on the street, what is going on, what happened in 2025, where we think things are going in 2026. And we are going to be talking to realtors, get the idea of what's going on with them. We're going to be looking at a lot of statistics, and we're also going to be talking a lot about what economists think are going to happen based on what's going on with the economy, demand for housing, mortgage rates, all that sort of stuff. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, you definitely want to do that. The other thing that you're going to want to keep an eye out for this channel, the second thing I wanted to mention, is a really neat video we got coming out very, very shortly. I'm not going to tell you when. You have to be subscribed to be able to catch it, but it is all about home buyers and home sellers who choose to wait for the spring market and the pros and the cons of doing so. So I think you're going to find that super, super interesting. And that is going to be released on this channel very shortly as well. So with that said, let's get into what's going on with South Surrey and White Rock. So as a reminder, when we're talking about prices, we are using what's called the home price index. This is just really not specific to any one house. So it's not the house that just sold down the street from you that did whatever it did, or it's not the unit in your building that just did whatever it did. But we're not using anecdotal stories here. We are using real data of the almost like the average of what's happening for places that are actually transacting or places that are coming to the market. And the home price index is kind of like inflation for houses. Is it going up or is it going down, generally speaking, for these areas? Now, we are looking at South Surrey, White Rock as a whole, but even South Surrey and White Rock is still a big sub area. So this doesn't mean this is what is happening with townhomes in Grandview or detached homes in Ocean Park, as an example. That is a sub area of a sub area. And so you want to get the real data on that when you're either buying or selling so you know exactly what's going on. But that said, we will be using benchmark prices as provided by the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board. So you've seen this graph before if you follow this channel, but the bar on the very right, the big blue bar, that is the amount of listings that have come to the market in this year, 2025 year to date. You can see as one of the highest years in the last 30 for the amount of new listings. And the red bar right beside it on the very right of the graph is the amount of sales and is one of the lowest in the last 30. So you've got this really big gap of new listings that have come to the market and the properties actually transacting, which means that buyers have had a really good year in terms of buying things. And there's been a lot of pressure on prices in real estate, generally speaking. So this is the most recent stats release from the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board. A couple things I just wanted to bring to your attention because it is relatively interesting. So month over month, we saw some really good gains in terms of sales for the month of October in the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board, but we lost a lot of that over the month of November. So it was down, sales were down about 16% from the month of October going into November, or coming out of November rather, and down about 17% from where they were at this time last year. So, you know, the world wasn't quite as wacky at this time last year as it is today. That said, new listings coming to the market really slowed, which is actually a good thing for probably everybody. What that means is month over month, it was down about 26%. So 26% less listings came to the market in the month of November versus the month of October. Now that's down about 7% year over year. But what that's doing is that's kind of making that gap that I talked about a little bit tighter. So maybe it's not so pronounced into the buyer's market. So if we see that continue, that'll just make conditions for everybody maybe a little bit better. Now, you might be thinking, well, this is probably common for this time of year. Well, when we look at this time last year, we are still down about 7%. So interesting, but we're in a different market in 2025 than we were in 2024 as well, right? So lots of people may be pulling their places off for the holidays that have been on over the course of the year in a challenging market, or maybe people, who may have listed in the month of November previously, maybe last year, they've chosen not to do that this year because they're hoping maybe spring conditions might be a little bit better. Something we're going to talk about on that prediction video coming out soon. So anyways, let's look at some of the numbers. This is just showing what the Greater Vancouver Board is doing. So that's Whistler all the way to downtown, Richmond, Burnaby, Tri-Cities, all that sort of stuff is included near Maple Ridge. That red line is all the different property types, what's kind of happened over the last year in terms of sale price. And then the blue line is the Fraser Valley Board that I've mentioned here. So getting into the actual numbers, condominium sales to active ratio, how many places are coming to the market versus how many people are actually buying them. The red line on here represents what's called a balanced market condition. And you can see see condominiums in the neighborhood are actually quite a bit below that. So we're coming in and around the 13% mark. So is that good or is that bad? Well, that's maybe saying roughly about 1 out of 7 properties that are coming to the market right now are actually selling. So that's an improvement over the last couple months, but still generally into a buyer's market condition, which is going to have downward pressure on prices. And certainly that's exactly what we've seen here. So prices in South Surrey, White Rock for condominiums did come down a little bit month over month. This one's a little more pronounced. And I do find these numbers to trail what the actual market conditions are by about 2 months. But nonetheless, this is what the data is telling us is that condos are down roughly about $12,000 month over month from the month of October and down about $62,000 year over year. So clearly, this is a market that is wildly in favor. Not wildly, actually. That's not a way of saying it. This is a market that is currently in favor of a buyer, but it's close to changing. That said, still in advantage for a buyer. So I do think you want to keep an eye on this market specifically. We have really noticed a lot more first-time home buyers coming back to play. There could be various reasons for this. Mortgage rates have not really changed; they have remained relatively low. And historically speaking, people might want to argue with me on that, but that's not the truth. The truth is they are historically low, just not COVID low. So a lot of people start to recognize this opportunity and get back into the market because they think that next year is going to be quite productive and likely see increases in prices. Who knows? We'll talk about that on the video. Affordability has certainly come back to this market. So this could be another reason that people are kind of jumping back in. New construction, there's a lot going on with new construction. There's talk about removing the GST from new construction. There's talk about the stall in new construction. You certainly aren't immune to seeing all the news articles about these new construction projects all over town that are having really, really big difficulties, either keeping financing, selling their units, going insolvent. There's lots of stuff going on. That is going to impact that market at this time next year. So by the time I'm recording a video like this at this time next year, that is going to be a big deal and something to pay attention to because there's going to be massive opportunity in the new construction market before all that inventory starts to run out. So we'll save that for another video, another day, but something to really think about there because a lot of the new construction is primarily, typically anyways, around condominiums and townhomes, right? You don't see a lot of detached home developments going on, especially in South Surrey and White Rock. And keep an eye on those sales numbers. You always want to be watching those to see what's happening because the new listings are down a lot more than the sales are. So something to be interested about. Townhomes, what's going on? We are back into a balanced market condition. So we're coming in about 16 to 17% sales to active ratio. That means there really shouldn't be any advantage to either a buyer or a seller. Places are transacting. Again, this is South Surrey, White Rock as a whole. It's not a sub-market, but townhomes are doing that in the area. Now, we have seen big downward pressure in the last few months. And in fact, we are seeing the results of some of that really big downward pressure in terms of prices. But look at the staggering difference of what's happened with townhomes in the neighborhood. I've always said South Surrey White Rock is almost like an emotional teenager with prices, but the highs are really high and the lows are really low. Month over month, the data is telling me that we're down about $28,000 month over month for a townhome in the area, and in the last year, we're down about $79,000. So those are obviously really, really big numbers, and there's a lot of affordability that's been gained for buyers as a result of what's been happening with the market. Now, interestingly enough, I don't even know that I agree with this, but when I'm looking at this data right here, it's telling me that we are in a balanced market condition and the conditions have improved for home sellers in the area. So that's really a balanced market. That means there's no advantage to either party. Now, that said, clearly there is still a massive advantage to buyers just because of where we're coming from. So it might not necessarily be the case today, but the story out there or story on the street is prices have come right way down and things are quite challenged, of course. So what my recommendation would be is to keep watching it, keep watching these videos to see what's going on. If you're trying to kind of time the market, got to be careful doing that. We've got videos on the channel about doing that, but you certainly have the benefit of choice and days on market. A lot of these properties are still sitting and they're having a difficulty selling right now. So take advantage of that. Don't be hesitant to go put your offers out there. Prices have continued descending. I've talked a lot about this being the market of movement, and the reason that is because it's the missing middle. It's the missing middle we always talk about, where it's got that affordability mixed with the space that millennials, people kind of my generation. I'm a little bit older on the millennial scale, but still in there. But a lot of those people who are starting families or got young families, the basement suite, mom and dad, or the rental isn't cutting it anymore. They need bigger space. They need more space. and they want to get into something that they're not going to have to move from, in 3 years. So they're looking at these townhomes, which, a lot of people can still reasonably afford in areas like this. So I do predict this will continue to be one of the stronger markets going into 2026. And if we keep seeing that condo market be productive, which it's kind of been hot and cold in the last couple months on that, but that is the domino that knocks down a lot of other dominoes. Those condos that are selling, those sellers need to go buy something. And if they're upsizing, they're looking typically at the townhouse market. So we'll have to keep watching that to see what happens. Detached home market has been horrendous in South Surrey and Waterford. It's been a very, very difficult market. It's been struggling quite a bit. You can see it has improved the last 2 months in a row, but it's still well into a buyer's market condition where it's coming in at just about 10%. So about 1 out of 10 properties come to the market actually transacting. And that has had incredible downward pressure on prices. You can see where that's gone from the spring of 2025. So last month, detached homes in the neighborhood are down about $24,000 according to the home price index, and down $154,000 year over year. Just wild, wild numbers again. That emotional kind of roller coaster that we've been seeing. Clearly, this market is huge, huge advantage to buyers right now. There is a ton of inventory to choose from. You've got the pick of the litter. If you don't think there's anything on the market, this is the most amount of inventory we've had on the market in almost the last 30 years. So there is a ton to go choose from. If you're someone that's selling your home, don't use hope as a strategy. Burying your head in the sand and pretending like things will get better. They could. We don't know, but we could also find ourselves in the exact same spot at this time next year, or even worse. We just simply don't know. We can make predictions on that, like we will in the video that you're going to subscribe to make sure you catch. That said, nobody knows, right? So hope is not a strategy. You do know what you know today, so that's something to maybe consider, because there's lots of people who thought this year was going to improve, and it progressively got worse, as I just showed you with the numbers right there. So something to think about. Prices are going to remain challenged for now. They're not going anywhere as of right now, based on what is happening with that sales to active ratio. That's one of the reasons we track that so closely. So if you're in the position to buy a house, you're thinking about going and getting something, put your offers out there. Go ahead and fly your flag. Like, there's lots of sellers out there that are interested in getting out of where they are, and they're starting to loosen up a little bit because we've been in this market for quite some time and they don't like what it's doing. So don't be afraid to put your offers out there and see what kind of opportunities you can create for yourself if you are a buyer. Now, I want to finish this off with the market drivers. These are always really, really important. We just came off a December 10th announcement from the Bank of Canada, and they made no movement on the overnight lending rate. In fact, they actually kind of signaled that over the course of 2026, they don't really expect any movement in their mortgage rates generally either. Now, again, who knows, right? We live in a wacky world where lots of stuff can happen and that sort of thing. But a lot of articles, as an example, have been coming out lately about the confidence that brings to the market. Because if a buyer is sitting around waiting for mortgage rates to get cheaper, or thinking that the home that they want to buy might be cheaper tomorrow, you can't fault them for waiting because they think it's going to be better. But when the Bank of Canada starts signaling that that's not necessarily the case, at least in the mortgage aspect of things, that can add a lot of confidence back to the market. So people are thinking, hey, if I've waited, if it's not going anywhere over 2026, today's better than tomorrow to get started. So it'd be interesting to watch that. Of course, trade deals and economic shifts. I mean, let's not get into that today. Nobody knows what's going to happen. And it seems we don't really get much updates on it anyways. So no point in guessing. We know demand is super, super high. Lots of people just sitting and waiting and watching, waiting and waiting and waiting, but they will strike. And when they do, there'll be a lot of it coming very, very quickly. So we'll wait to see for when that happens. Seasonal trends, we are in the quietest part of the year. Again, I did a really cool video about people waiting for spring that you do want to check out. Do not miss it. It's really interesting and it might change your perspective a little bit. But traditionally speaking, most people wait until the spring until they choose to put their home on the market or buy a market. And that impacts both home buyers and sellers in different ways. And you want to see that video. But we are going into our busier season, but we're still a couple months out from that. So I don't expect any fireworks to be going off in the month of December in terms of what's going on with housing by any means. And local policy changes. We live in British Columbia. There's always a ton happening in British Columbia with our government, what's going on. And there's some really big stuff in the news right now. There's some stuff that is actually making people quite fearful about what's going on. And this isn't the place to comment on that as of right now, because there's not a lot to comment on. There's a lot of noise, and there's going to be a lot more coming out on that in the coming months and years. So, not something that we're looking at kind of unpacking at the moment right now. But certainly, if you want to call me directly and get my opinion on that, I'm always happy to provide that. But anyways, that is where things are kind of at. And right before I let you go, I just want to give you a little bit of appreciation. If you've been following this YouTube channel and the journey on this YouTube of just trying to provide really good market data and intelligence and location information for South Surrey, White Rock, and Surrey, surrounding areas, what's going on in the community, I just want to really appreciate you. We've had incredible growth. We're almost at 1 million views of the videos on this channel, which is just mind boggling to think that many people have watched the content. And I just want to appreciate you. So thank you for commenting on the videos when you do. Thank you for sharing them with friends and family that you think will find them valuable. And I just want to wish everybody watching this a very happy holiday, Merry Christmas, or whatever you celebrate. I hope you get some downtime with family. You get to enjoy it. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the new year. Take care.